Welcome to another edition of Conversations Different, the podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican, focusing on the interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This is Inez Russell Gomez, and today I am talking to Kevin Bowen, Executive Director of the Santa Fe Human Rights Alliance. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, we'll just start at the beginning and tell us what the Human Rights Alliance is and why it especially might be needed more than ever in the weeks and months ahead.
The Human Rights Alliance is, in technical terms, a 501c3, not-for-profit organization. It was founded in 1993. Now we're 31 years old this year, soon to be 32 years old. And it was founded originally to be a suicide prevention hotline, or to offer that, and to offer support for the community.
And by community, tell exactly who you mean by that.
But it offers support for the queer community, the LGBTQ community. The year of the founding was important because there was not legislation within the state of New Mexico, within the healthcare sector, to really address and help those with HIV and AIDS.
Right.
So it was one of the reasons why it was founded. Senator Liz Stefanik is one of the people who co-founded the organization, and it was one organization that at one point we broke, and it became Equality New Mexico, which is a lobbying arm, and they also have a foundation. They're out of Albuquerque, and the Human Rights Alliance stayed here.
Okay. And you guys do a lot of different, outreach to inform people about issues. Then there's every June,
We put on Pride.
Yes.
So now, you're baiting me to answer that question, right? One of the major things we do every year is a Pride celebration. We're really proud to say that we've grown that celebration now to taking over 2.5 city blocks and almost 12,000 people attending.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is. And within the community, within the context of the LGBTQ community, Pride celebrations have always been really important, especially for people in my age group. I'm not going to get into those details exactly, but that was the only place we could go where we saw other people who were like us.
Right. Because in those days, people live their lives one way, and then they might go to bars or meetings or something, and then they would have a chance to be who they were.
Right. So we, back in the days of the 60s and even, 60s, late 60s, before that in the 50s when the movement was still starting, it was pretty much underground.
Right, because people could be arrested and put in jail.
Yes. Well, we're starting to go in that direction now, aren't we?
That's why we're talking today.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you would go to a gay bar to meet other gay people or other queer people. And little by little, after things happened with Stonewall in 1969, that's how Pride started as a protest.
Right, and it was in June, so that's why Pride is in June.
Correct.
And this is New York City.
New York City.
And the cops just went crazy. I mean, you talk about just like evil.
Yes, they went into the Stonewall Inn, and, it was illegal to be a queer in New York. But there were lots of queers in New York.
Yes.
Because
you could be comfortable
city.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there was a woman named Marsha Mason, and she was a trans woman.
Oh, okay. Okay, not the actor. Yeah.
And she threw the first high heel and started the fight. And it went on for 3 days.
Yeah.
And that became really the start of the modern day LGBTQ movement.
And the movement isn't to say everyone else should be LGBTQ, like, I'm going to convert you and give you the toaster, as the old joke went. It's that just leave us be and let us live our lives.
We're
and
humans.
Respect us. Yeah.
Yeah. We're humans. And our organization, to go further about what you're talking about, we're a human rights organization.
Yes.
So to us, human rights are LGBTQ rights, they're women's rights, they're indigenous rights, they're people of color rights. And we, within the LGBTQ community, have been the victims now of identity politics.
Yeah, they always say don't do identity politics on the GOP side, but it works so well for them because the trans community was targeted in a really vile way in this campaign.
And it's going to continue.
Yeah.
And all of the things that were being said on behalf of the right, especially the horrific commercial that Yvette Harrell ran here in this state about trans athletes. And, now President-elect Trump saying that your kids are going to go to school and 2 days later they'll have a sex change is you can't even give a kid a Tylenol in school. How are you going to do a sex change, right? If you're thinking.
Yeah. And it wasn't challenged enough in the media by, his sort of normal supporters who mainly only want his tax cuts. Mm-hmm. And it was obvious that was hitting a nerve among some voters, which is what they wanted to do to get enough support to win. But you wonder then, how do they deliver on that promise? And what do people do who are either trans, queer, trans allies? What can we do to protect our friends and neighbors and relatives?
Well, that's probably a multi-pronged answer. First is to understand the community, and the primary part about the trans community, like the rest of us, is they're humans.
Right. And
the second part are those of us who are within the LGBTQ community need to be allies because they've taken identity politics and then put it to the most marginalized. And basically, we have already had reports of 11 suicides since the election across the country.
My son came into my room right after the election and was crying, and he said they're killing themselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. It's a problem because heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, those of us who have a voice, I'm lucky. I'm a cisgendered white male with white hair, and I can get things done by going in and talking to people.
Right.
Because I don't scare them.
You might, though, because you're in very good shape, and most Americans who get older are not. So they're probably all jealous of you.
Oh, well, whatever that's about. But the thing is to go back to this, and this is our community, the straight community, the indigenous community, the Black community, the people of color, just have to stand up. Because what it appears that they want us to do is to take a knee and be scared.
Yes.
And we can't do that. We can't. And the more that we break a barrier. So we know here, and I want to talk about New Mexico because that's key. We know that Hispanic men, younger and older, voted more for Trump than they have in the past. And the other thing we also know is, unfortunately, whatever happened with Kamala's campaign and the outreach did not really step out of a box and go talk to other people. At least this is what we feel and we've seen. And what we mean by that is, in order for people to understand the LGBTQ community, especially the trans community, is you have to have a personal interaction.
Right.
And if we as a community of queer people don't step out to give that personal information and action, then we don't do ourselves a favor. And so what we're recommending, what we're doing as a board, and what some of the other organizations are doing is to step and cross the line. Let's have a conversation. We live in New Mexico. It's kind of a family-oriented state, and people react better when there's some personal connection.
Yes. And we're still a door-to-door, talk over coffee kind of place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would guess that once you start talking to some of these people that felt really marginalized and left out, we know that men did, and we bring in maybe a relative, maybe a friend, maybe someone they know, and then there's a better connection. And, they're making us be called predators and we're grooming children, and that is so far from the truth.
No, it's...
And we need to have a conversation about that.
Right, and it's setting you up to be hurt, and not just hurt yourself, but to be beaten or killed by people who take it too seriously.
Exactly.
And on that cheerful note, we'll take a break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
HomeWise is a local New Mexico nonprofit committed to increasing the availability of affordable homes for working people in Santa Fe. Our HomeWise Homes communities provide quality-built, energy-efficient homes with up to 40% of the houses reserved for modest-income buyers. Our newest community, Miraflores, offers single-family homes with spacious backyards, a family-friendly environment, and convenient access to the Tierra Contenta Trail Network. Standard features include low-E vinyl windows, stainless steel appliances, granite kitchen countertops, a tankless water heater, and more. Contact us today to learn more about Miraflores. Call 505-983-9473 or visit us at homewise.org. Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 188231.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Kevin Bowen about the feeling in the country and in New Mexico when it comes to the rights of marginalized people. We were talking before the break about how everyone needs to be included in the discussion, so that maybe if I'm a housewife in Rio Rancho who's worried that a trans boy is going to go to the bathroom next to my daughter, knowing people might change that feeling. Or how do you get past those prejudices and stereotypes so that we're not trying to make people afraid?
There's a couple of things. I mean, to discuss with the trans community, it seemed like what some women were concerned about, and they stepped back as trans athletes.
Yes.
Because women have fought so hard to get where they are. And the reality is that situation is rare.
Yes.
Right? It's rare. And the respective sports and colleges need to make those decisions on how they're going to handle all of that. And that is beyond what the public can deal with, right? But know that this is not something that's happening every day, and women are getting pushed out of their sports. That's not the case.
And there seemed to be this idea that all these crazy boys were becoming women so they could go win medals. And it was just like so disrespectful to what happens when you're born in the wrong body and you feel it and you finally have a chance to be yourself.
Some of the bravest people I know are trans people.
Yeah.
Because they're being true to themselves in a society that pushes them aside and marginalizes them and calls them freaks. And they are truly remarkable in the fact that they stand up for themselves. And you don't go 1 week, you're not trans, next week you are trans. It's a whole process. Right. It's one you have to deal with yourself. And you typically work with psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors. And it's a long, extensive process.
And they're not doing surgery on children or even teenagers.
No,
all of that happens when you're of a mature age and able to make a decision.
Correct. The issue with gender-affirming healthcare, because all that we think about, and I'm going to be very frank, what happens with this conversation is lots of people just go to genitalia, right? It's all about the genitalia. What do you have? Do you have a penis? Do you have balls? Do you have a vagina, right? And that's what gets people all upset. No, it's nothing to do with having those things done to children. The most important part about gender-affirming healthcare is that both the child and the parent participate in that type of healthcare with the doctor and with the psychiatrist or psychologist to help the pathway happen, because both the parents and the child need to work on it together. And it's heartbreaking for some parents to be in a state where you can no longer take your kid for gender-affirming healthcare. And that first step in gender-affirming healthcare is counseling and psychiatric help.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if they're going to use whatever federal powers they can to, let's say you're taking certain hormones, and could they ban them or, say they can't go across state lines, because the right in this has seemed really clever about using laws to stop people from getting the care they need.
Yes, and the things that we all need to be concerned about and we need to watch is what's going to happen once all of the new, agency heads that he puts into place from the cabinet start to make changes. Because where we're going to see a lot of issues would be in Medicaid.
Yeah.
Because in the state of New Mexico, gender-affirming health care can be done through Medicaid. So that could be attacked immediately by the federal government by cutting off funding.
Yes.
So one of the things that the state needs to look at, and I believe they are going to be in the next legislative session, is how are we going to pay for these things to stay in place within our state? You're also going to see issues with Title IX funding happening. And we need to be a step ahead of that, because the Title IX funding with schooling could be very problematic, because they're going to start to direct what you can and cannot teach.
Okay.
That would include recognizing of pronouns in school. Timmy has 2 moms. We can't talk about that. What about the reality of the history of the United States of America? That is going to be homogenized so that it looks very white and not wrong. Yeah. And they don't want the truth to be told.
I always think my Catholic buddies are going to be surprised because Protestants don't like them either. Not all Protestants, but the really evangelical Protestants. Mm-hmm. So once they take care of everybody else, it's like you guys are going to be in for a big surprise, because we moved from Las Vegas to West Texas, mm-hmm. where I immediately found out that my lovely classmates who were nice thought that I was a Catholic who was a cannibal and worshiped the Virgin Mary. And they would say things like that to me. And I was like, what? And it was just,
That's like the immigrants are eating the dogs and the cats,
yes,
right?
It was totally. Right. And I grew up understanding that there's a certain segment of that religion that just thinks, we are the whore of Babylon and that's it. And that Catholics have forgotten that. I'm surprised, but they maybe never lived in West Texas as a 12-year-old and was invited, for free candy to go to the Church of Christ. They bring a bus through our neighborhood to pick you up.
So, how long has all of this stuff been going on now?
And they grew up with
everyone, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, the need within the community is, what we want to do is help facilitate building community.
Okay.
So we're running a series of community conversations. They're on our website. They're free. So we can sit down and talk about what are the necessary things legally you may have to do.
Okay.
In addition to that, it's really important for our community. After all of these years, we know how to organize, we know how to stand up, and we know how to fight.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it.
On that, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Kevin Bowen of the Santa Fe Human Rights Alliance. You mentioned things that legally need to happen.
Yes.
And let's talk about that. Especially, I've been reading a lot about how same-sex couples need to update their wills, their health requirements, or their power of health, that kind of stuff. Why is that necessary?
For a variety of reasons. There might be some couples, for example, that are not married. So they are in a relationship,
Right.
a committed long-term relationship, but there is no legal documentation within a will structure or within medical power of attorney.
Right.
So that really should be handled because that will be cracked down upon. It already is in places and has been an issue before. Those who are married need to check all of their paperwork. There will be some things happening if someone brings a case up through the courts to the Supreme Court about same-sex marriage.
Right. Because Clarence Thomas made it clear
And
in
Samuel Alito both.
both.
Yeah.
In the Dobbs case, that this is a chance to relook at some other things that have been decided incorrectly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is another reason why states that are blue are taking a step to make sure that actually we need to make sure that same-sex marriage is within our Constitution.
Okay.
Right? That's something that's important. And some of the states are already making those steps because if your marriage is dissolved federally, there may be some other issues there. Now, we don't know how long that would take.
Right.
We don't know what might happen, but my best guess is that they're already queuing things up.
Yeah, I was trying to think, where is the case that, because these things have been in the works for a long time. I mean, the whole mifepristone for birth control,
Oh, yeah.
that when, they file a case in Amarillo and it's going straight to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Wow.
So those things are important. And legally, I think same-sex couples, queer people in general, need to know what the laws are in each state that they're now traveling to. The Human Rights Campaign had already put out, and I believe it's still on their website. That's not our organization. We're the Human Rights Alliance, but the Human Rights Campaign is a national organization. They have put out states that are not really safe for the queer community to be traveling to.
It's kind of like a green book.
Kind of like a green book.
Yeah.
Here we are again,
Yeah.
right? It's like the civil rights movement all over again. And that is, to me, it's a matter of intelligence and safety for our community. Like, we need to know that. Traveling to California, no problem. Going to Florida, might be a different story, especially depending on what part of Florida you go to. Traveling Louisiana, Alabama, Texas. I'm not saying don't do it, but at this point, today's 2 months to the inauguration.
Yes.
We don't know what we're going to be seeing. And I think we need to be prepared for that, to fight.
Yeah, because you don't know if among all the things they're saying they're going to do, they might be so busy rounding up immigrants that they don't have time to go after trans people. But he might just try to do everything at once. You don't,
Well, that's A. B is, with this election, it appears, even here in Santa Fe, that people are emboldened now.
Yeah.
That they've been given, it's okay. So if you go to a state where there are lack of LGBTQ rights, more specifically trans rights, we would imagine that those people there might be more emboldened. And if they see someone who they think is queer, who knows what's going to happen.
Right. And those states are going to pass more draconian laws too.
Right. They're all queued up.
Yeah. So that's a thing that's going to happen. And that could either go national or just start bleeding, because we do in New Mexico have, Eastern New Mexico, very conservative, socially conservative legislators that would like to see some of these laws passed here.
And we are lucky in that we are one of the safest states in the union from the standpoint of women's health, and the LGBTQ community and other marginalized communities. So the other thing that we can't prove by statistics quite yet, but phone calls and inquiries that I'm getting from people and other people that run organizations that service our community in the state, the people are going to start moving here because it's safe. Especially those people, they're going to Colorado and New Mexico, because if you're a parent with a child who is either trans or non-binary, you need to be someplace safe for your kid.
Yeah, because you can't even trust that they're safe at school if they're in a place where they can't talk about who they are.
No.
And the statistics for suicide for trans children and teenagers are not good. I mean, those are some of the people that harm themselves the most.
The statistics for kids in that age group, and these are very difficult to get because if they're under legal age, when you run a survey, it's challenging. But the Trevor Project, who works with LGBTQ youth, had a 700% increase in calls to the crisis line the day after the election. And these are kids.
Oh.
And the issue with that people don't understand, I think, and maybe they do, but Gen Z, 20% identify as queer or non-binary.
Yeah.
20%. That's a big number of people. And it doesn't mean anything. To those kids, how they identify and the others in that age group, for the most part, they're pretty open about people and their sexuality, right?
Yep.
But all you have to do is start to other people. And we run down a road of bullying in school. And, for Pete's sake, when I was in school, there was a group of us that everyone suspected was gay. So we did get bullied.
Yep.
It wasn't horrible, but nonetheless,
Was
I
it
remember
comfortable?
it. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And nowadays, with the use of the internet and TikTok and social media and all of those things, you can take someone down quite
It's
easily.
so cruel.
It's horrible. Yeah. Just horrible.
I was thinking back because of Facebook, you touch base with your high school friends again that you haven't spoken to in years and years. And some of the most typically masculine men from my school turned out they were gay. Mm-hmm. And other ones were gay and you didn't even think about it because they were just kind of dorky at that time. And then we had a couple of cheerleaders who everyone knew were gay, but no one thought about it because I actually went to a nice school, even if it was in West Texas at that point, and they grew up and had really interesting lives. But I could not believe how many gay men there were at Lubbock High School. And that was just fascinating to see, and how much happier they might have been if they could have been who they were all the way and not having to get the girl to go to prom who had a big crush on him, but they didn't like, It's just like all those little ways you hide.
We've all been through that.
Yeah.
But I mean, to go back to this whole conversation is that we have to stand up for who we are. Yeah. We have to reach out into the community and show them that we're just like they are.
Yes.
You may think we're different, but we're really not. And we have to stand up not only for the LGBTQ community, but we need to stand up for the indigenous community and the people of color and the Asian community, because all these groups under an administration that is going to allow what now appears to be such pain and tragedy to happen are all going to get pulled down. And God, that's not really who we are.
Well, I think actually it is now, but I hope we can change and do better.
Right.
That's been the heartbreak that is who we are.
Yeah, I just didn't want to say it. See, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this is the point where we are. And if we don't come, I keep telling everyone this, let's come together in community.
Yes.
Those of us in a group that have seen how this community has changed, but have been around when, you were very quiet when you went places because no one should know. Huh. We really feel that, this is a 5-alarm fire.
Yeah.
And we need to bring in those of us in our age group, but more importantly, the youth.
Right.
So that they know that we're here to work with them and support them.
And also so they can learn from your wisdom because you've done this before and you know what to do.
Right. Remember the ACT UP movement for AIDS? Right.
Yep.
And those people were pretty radical and they were pretty, upsetting to a lot of people, but the community hasn't had the AIDS epidemic, right?
Yeah.
But now look at the Director of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right? He thinks HIV doesn't cause AIDS. I mean, if they come in and start to dismantle Health and Human Services and go after the Ryan White program that funds so many people who have AIDS or
and
HIV.
are living just fine because we now know
Right.
how to treat it.
Right. Then we could go right back into another epidemic again.
And I was in my 20s when it was going, and everybody knew people who died and saw them get sick and saw the whole.
I went through most of my 20s in New York City.
Oh man, you must have lost a lot of people.
And I worked in fashion.
Oh.
And cosmetics and within the different department stores, and someone wouldn't show up for work one day.
Yeah.
And a week later they were dead. I mean, it was all the time. The theater was decimated with so many men who died. It really, AIDS didn't really get any funding because look at what Reagan did.
No, he
ignoring,
just ignored it.
Like Rock Hudson and all the people that were trying to talk about this. And it took a long time, but it was a lot of fighting to get that to happen. And the beauty of what happened then was that everyone came together. It wasn't that there was lesbians and gay men and this person and that person. Everyone came together because this affected the entire community. It did.
And that's really where you're at again, I think.
I think so.
This is going to affect the entire community, your safety, your ability to live your life as you want, and just basic things like to marry who you want and have your children.
And love who you want.
Yeah.
And the ability to know that people can support you even if your child decides that they're non-binary or trans or whatever it is. I get asked that advice all the time. And well, what do we do? I'm like, just love them.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all you can do. And on that note, this has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week.